Good morning, friends. I am Shashank Chavan and this is the Ecosailor. Today, our guest is Captain Shiv Halbe, the CEO of MASA. MASA is well known for its contribution to improving the safety and working conditions of seafarers. It is an association of some of the world's biggest ship owners. Captain Halbe started his career from TS Rajendra 74-76 batch. Then he joined Scindia Steam Navigation, worked there for 10 years, and after that went to sail on the foreign flag vessels. Later, he came ashore and started his shore career with Denholm Ship Management, a UK-based company. He then moved to 2-3 startups and was with the Gulf Energy Maritime for around 9 years. After that, he joined MASA, where he wore multiple hats over a tenure of 6.5 years. Captain Halbe is a seasoned mariner and an industry veteran with around 5 decades of experience. He is well known for his leadership and passion for improving seafarer welfare in India. He truly embodies the spirit of the modern eco-sailor. Good morning, Captain Halbe.
Good
Sir,
morning to you.
thank you. Thank you for accepting our invitation, and we are honored to be with you. And it's an honor to interview a person like you, industry stalwart. So, to begin with this interview, I would like to have to know people also, like what was your beginning in this career, sea career, how it began. So, what inspired you to come in the at sea in a childhood?
Okay.
Yeah.
I am born and brought up in Calcutta,
Okay.
where I did my full schooling. I did in Calcutta, and I come from a somewhat privileged background because my father was a chief engineer,
Oh,
and my father
you have
was
that in the blood.
yeah, my father was ex-Dufferin.
Okay.
So as a child, when his ships would come to Kolkata, it was obvious that we went on board. So I had a small experience of being on board. I did not sail on board, but visiting ships was not
Good
unusual
enough, yeah.
for me, and I thoroughly used to enjoy those visits. Post that, I also joined the Sea Cadet Corps in Calcutta.
Okay.
And
During your schooling time.
days,
Okay.
yes. So that gave me some more, aptitude and insight into the mercantile marine or the naval traditions. So joining the merchant navy was always the first choice. It was nothing else. Uh, there is one aspect which I don't know whether I should mention, but after I finished my school, I joined Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was there for 3 months. I studied metallurgy.
Okay.
But I think the calling of the sea was just too strong. And when I got selected for the training ship Rajendra, I thought to migrate was the better thing
So
to do.
you must be the unique one who left the IIT and went to DA.
I'm not that unique. I found that there are more of my kin, especially when I meet my childhood friends. I saw that there were more than me who have done that.
Really.
But they didn't go to sea. They
Okay.
pursued engineering or similar careers, and they've done well, of course. So I do have very fond memories of my 3 months stay there. Very illuminating, I must say, when I compare with the maritime world.
Right.
Uh, so, so going on the training ship Rajendra was not so much of a, the not so much of a fear or fear of the unknown, because I knew, and having spoken to my father. Also, I must mention that two of my maternal uncles also went on to become chief engineers.
Oh, really?
And one of them was on Dufferin and one of them was on DMET. So this profession was not something unheard of in my family.
Correct.
That was Oh, I think many of them thought it was a foregone conclusion, that this is what will happen.
Yeah.
But having said that, the experience that I did get and the situations that I did see in my career, I don't think anybody can be prepared for that. You may hear and experience are two different things. People say that the local trains in Mumbai are packed, but when you are in a packed train, you will know what's the difference between hearing a packed train and being in one.
Exactly. My next question was all about that. Like, though you were all groomed, sanskar to hai. But how was the experience when you first climbed up the ship? First contract and
That memory is quite vivid. And in fact, just this week, 3-4 days ago, we had a Scindia old boys get together. The Scindia Steam Navigation was a pioneer company in India, but it wound up about 25-30 years ago. So most of the people, they come to Mumbai and meet us. We have a get together once a year. Now, I met when I was joining my first ship in Chennai, along with me was a fifth engineer who was also joining his first ship. And it was in the evening at 5 o'clock. And when we were boarding the gangway, the whole ship and the gangway shook. So we just stepped out, and it was more like Pehle aap, please. We didn't know what was going on. The vessel was due to sail at about 7-8 o'clock in the evening, and we came to know only later that was trying out engines, which something we didn't know that happens on board. But by the way, as things progress, so that is it. When I met this fifth engineer, I told him, "Do you remember this trying out engines at 5 o'clock in the evening?" He replied to me in Hindi, मैं तो डर गया यार, कैसा हिलता था वो gangway. I said, yeah, true. And that was an old ship with Doxford engines. So it was one of those heavy duty stuff. For a small ship, I guess it was, and everything was rattling. But yes, I think we learned a lot on that ship. Old ships give you different experiences, so which was quite good fun. Not when you were undergoing it, but looking back, it was fun. No questions.
Correct. There must be many adventurous events and many memorable events in your life during the sea, at sea. We all have, right? Would you like to mention one?
I would refrain from answering that, because one wise old man, seafarer, once told me that whenever anybody says that he went through a very adventurous and exciting period, it means somebody else has not done his job properly. Why should you have excitement? If you have done your job, there should be no excitement.
Good point.
So I would follow his advice and say that let's leave it at that. Because bad weather, we all have been through bad weather. And you can't describe bad weather. You have to endure it.
You have to experience it.
You understand how it is. So, yes, but one memory I have very vivid in today's context also. When I became a second mate, those days ships didn't have two radars. They had only one radar. And mostly we never used the radar unless the master thought it fit to use the radar. We wouldn't start the radar. Because anybody who wanted to start the radar, the captain would first question you, he would ask you, something wrong with your vision? That you need a radar to see? Look outside, the visibility is good. I was on the midnight to 4 watch, southbound from Suez to India. We had loaded in Russia, Black Sea. And, the weather was beautiful, Red Sea, month of September, October, calm, pleasant. The AB was with me. And, when we were southbound, I told the AB, kuch gadbad hai. He says, ha sab, something is there. And nothing visible, zero visibility. Once in a while, some faint light was visible somewhere, which didn't cause us any, concern. Both of us looked through the binoculars, couldn't see anything. And out of nowhere, suddenly the whole vicinity lit up. Okay, lights came on, and it was the US 7th Fleet which was actually overtaking at least my ship and maybe another 2-3 ships. Because when you come out of Suez, you're in a convoy. So, more or less the ships are in sight. Those who are ahead of you will remain ahead of you. Those who are behind you are generally behind you. Till you enter the, the proper Red Sea, then they speed up. And it was, and then I put on the radar, and there were at least 40 ships. So obviously they had their radars on their big naval ships. So they knew what they were doing. But for me, it was among the most, I mean, I don't think I have been ever awestruck like this, that my God, what happened? Yeah. And when we came out of Suez, we didn't see the 7th Fleet there. I don't know where they were. Maybe they were in Gulf of Aqaba. I have no idea. But today this won't happen. Ships have the radars on, and they would AIS radar, everything else is being used.
Today's for the seafarers, the life has become slightly better, I would say, compared to our good old days. They have a good instruments, good tools to navigate better.
See, there is an old saying.
Do you think today, because you have a better tools, the quality has gone down, or it has helped to better the competence of the people?
See, this is a tough question.
Yeah.
And only way I will answer this is quoting something I read. There used to be a magazine called Reader's Digest, if you remember. I believe it is shut down now. And Reader's Digest, at the end of some, chapter or any story, there would be some 3-4 lines in which some snippets were given. So I remember one of the snippets in which it said that in the Indus Valley, they unearthed some tablets. They used to write on papyrus and mud tablets. They unearthed them, unearthed some tablets, and there were 3 things written on it. One was that the city council has not done much for water conservation, so wonder how the next summer will be. And Indus Valley is 3,000 years ago.
Right.
They wrote that, which we see today. We say the same thing today.
Correct.
2, they said that the garbage collection of the city council is inadequate, so there is a danger of disease spreading. We talk about that today, still there. And the third thing it said, that the younger generation is so careless, wonder what they will do. So we say that. So if 3,000 years ago, someone thought it was a problem and we continue to think it's a problem, then we really have to think, is it a problem, or we are just not identifying them correctly.
Correct.
Okay. So when people say that the younger generation and they blame the younger generation, I think they are not, or they are actually questioning their own ability. That if you blame the younger, why are you blaming the younger generation? It's our job to shape them. So if they are not shaped, blame ourselves, not blame them. The various tools and technology that you mentioned, we have to accept it. We cannot choose and discard at our whims and fancies. One of my, when I was in school, one of the thoughts that came to me, and when you get older, you start reflecting on what you learned. And I remember, today we use the word nuclear very easily, because everybody is a nuclear power station, okay? But in the 60s, the only thing nuclear that we knew was Hiroshima, Nagasaki, because America dropped the atom bomb. That's what we knew. And what is an atom bomb? It's a nuclear bomb that someone told us.
Yes.
But I remember one of my Hindi teachers, actually in the class, he mentioned that inventions will happen. How to use the invention is up to us. He says, nuclear bomb America ने बनाया और हिरोशिमा में हिरोशिमा और नागासाकी पे उन्होंने बम का वर्षाव किया. लेकिन यही न्यूक्लियर से बिजली बनती है, which we didn't know. इसी से बिजली बनती है, तो उसका उपयोग आप कैसा करें ये आपके ऊपर निर्भर है. So the same thing applies today. We say technology. You look at the mobile phone. Is it a good thing? It's a wonderful device. wonderful. Depends how you use it.
Correct.
So if you use it when you're driving, I think it's the dumbest thing to do. But if you use it to communicate, well, it's the best communication tool that you can have at hand.
Correct.
So it's up to us how we shape the technology and how we shape the people who use the technology. And if you are trying to beat people into submission to do or not do something, it will not work. It will not work.
Yeah.
People have never ever learned anything by being subjugated. You have to encourage them. You have to create an environment for them to learn. And that is true, I think, for all professions. It's not
I
just
think every
maritime.
generation it keeps on evolving.
Yes, it will evolve.
Yeah,
It will evolve.
correct, correct.
So we have to accept it and we have to, channelize it. I think it will work. So you look at the technology that is available on board today, but yet we get so much stuck on the old style of navigation or old style of doing things. Why? If you see the technology, you look at engineering. Today, the time between overhauls for main engine and equipment has changed drastically. It is a huge difference now.
Correct.
Because the engines have become more reliable.
Developed,
because the technology is better, which has made them reliable.
Right.
But yet we worry about, he has never done a unit before.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
he doesn't need to do a unit.
To do it, yeah.
He doesn't need to do it. When I bought my first car 30 years ago, it was a second-hand Fiat. And every time I started it, it was a routine to open the bonnet, check the water, check the oil dipstick. Because there were no indicators. But today, I don't even know how to open the bonnet of my car.
True.
Because it's so reliable.
True.
Yeah. The water is a recirculation method in which the heated water is collected in a condenser. It just works. Correct. Same with the oil. I have never checked the oil. There's an indicator, it tells you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So as we become more reliable, I think as the technology becomes more reliable, I think we should adapt to that technology rather than clutch on to our own old idea. Right. We have to move on.
It is very obvious what we see. It is irrespective of which generation you belong to, but that resistance to change and adapt the new things is always is common with all the generations. What we see. Of course, it is. Like it would be a sensible to really evaluate and use the resources in the right way. Whatever changes has happened, you evaluate those changes and use it in the right way, beneficial to you and your this thing. So yes, definitely. Moving towards now we come to the MASA, I would say, okay, which is a kind of one of the savior of the Indian seafarers, about like the umbrella of MASA. So can you little bit put a light on the MASA and its role with the Indian seafarers?
Yeah, thank you for this question. See, the history of MASA, what you see today, is only a tip of the iceberg. The foundation of MASA, or the precursor to MASA, was something known as OACC, Owners Agent Committee Crew. This was a legacy of the British before pre-independence. There were a large number of ships with Indian crew which were actually British owned, P&O's and Dorchester and all these Ellerman lines, city lines. They had Indian crew on board, and these crew were routed through the shipping master here to ensure that they were not taking away jobs of the British sailors. There was something known as a National Maritime Board set up in UK to protect their jobs, because we were actually a British colony. So there was,
no doubt about
technically British. So they created an equivalent here called National Maritime Board India. And the National Maritime Board India, which comprised of seafarers unions and OSCC and some other companies, INSA in particular, negotiated the seafarers' wages here so that they do not undercut the British, which is good for us actually. and that they provided a lot of jobs to the Indian seafarers, huge number. And if you may remember, there was something called Seamen's Employment Office in Baladi State.
Right.
So every morning people would muster there, and the ship's name would be put up on the notice board, and they would say, okay, one bosun I want, one sarang I want, and that's how they apparently work. So MASA or OSCC is an integral part of the progress of the Indian seafarers since independence.
Okay.
And in fact, in our office, we have the second NMBI agreement of 1957. We have a copy of that,
okay,
and subsequent ones. Right up to the 70s, the NMBI was very much there, but there were certain MASA companies at the time. The members were like Chevron and Mobil and Exxon. They were members of MASA. Today also they are members, but through their agencies here now, or through their companies here now. And they, they set up or supported the setting up of the first tanker safety and chemical tanker safety in LBS College was done through OSCC, through Mobil and Chevron, because they wanted their officers to be trained. So they set up the course here, and it was LBS College which set up, because that was the premier institute at the time here. Similarly, the first firefighting course, which was set up at TS Rajendra, was set up with the support of OSCC, because funding was a bit of a challenge. And there were certain seats reserved for OSCC
companies.
Yeah, because they gave the money, so they had some priority. In 1992, when the Comet report chaired by Dr. C.P. Srivastav was tabled, it was then decided that the government should voluntarily encourage the user to pay for the training, because a significant shift took place from the Indian flag to the foreign flag in the late 80s because of the transformation that was taking place. You may remember that the 80s saw the biggest ever slowdown in merchant shipping,
right.
And a lot of Indian companies suffered at the time, and they closed down. So there was a significant amount of joblessness in India. In fact, there was something called a Nanda committee on the rating training issue, and the committee recommended to shut down the training institutes which the government was operating because of the joblessness that was being created. So the TS Mekhla, TS Bhadra, which were the government owned institutes, they stopped training, so that they didn't add to the pool of unemployed seafarers. The role has changed now. It is totally 180 degrees, and people want to start maritime education for the ratings now, training. So that in 1992, so OSCC transformed into MASA and registered, because before that it was an association of companies which did not require a registration. It was an association. But once we registered, then we had to follow the ROC, the Registrar of Company Rules, etc., etc. And we have now, so though on paper we look like a 30-year-old organization, we are not. We are actually almost 75 years. We are a 75-year-old organization. We then took up and supported the maritime education and training. There was earlier an avatar called MMERT, if you may have heard of it. So we supported that. And by 1999, we realized that this is not enough. We needed to do more, because SCCW 95 had come into the picture, and there was quite a bit of training required. So we started in a small way in Baladi State by setting up a small training center to conduct the basic safety training courses and tanker safety courses, familiarization courses, the PSSR course, because all the ratings had to be put through that. So we started with that, and we then moved to Navi Mumbai and set up a proper institute in Great Eastern Summit. And of course, that institute has grown in the last 25 years. Over a 25-year-old period, we have had now more than 50,000 seafarers who have passed.
I am one of that, sir.
Oh,
Few courses I have done from the
so
MASA.
you will know
Institute
then.
Maritime.
So
Yeah,
what it
yeah.
was, and
Correct,
we
correct.
now, try to maintain a certain standard, what it should be for the maritime industry. Not many at the time were wanting to start the post sea courses because they are more challenging to have. Pre sea is easier in that sense because the students are just off school, so you know the requirement of teachers is quite different there than in the post sea. While post sea is all about competency and not shaping the future. That role is a bit secondary compared to the competency training, etc. So the journey has been a long one, yes, but I think it has been quite satisfying even for MASA. Though we would like to see something more happen.
Right.
The world is changing. So let's see where we go.
Yeah. So what right now what we see is MASA, what you explained is like more towards the improving the competence of the people, quality of the people, Indian seafarers. I want you to explain your role as a MASA, particularly in the COVID time, what we have seen, like you guys were in forefront with the ship owners, having chartered flights. Like we only dreamed a chartered flight, but
Yeah.
you provided seafarers with a chartered flight. Can you
Okay.
explain, that period, like how you guys managed with that crisis? And
See, when the COVID hit, none of us knew what to do. Okay. And we were all clutching at straws, groping in the dark. And that includes even the government, because nobody had ever faced anything like this. I mean, we come from India, so having a Bombay Band or something like that was not unheard of. But it was once in a while, it happened morning 6 to evening 6 affair. But here it was something real which hit hard. And before I start, I must compliment the extreme proactive approach, not just by the Directorate General of Shipping, but by the ministry, but by the Home Ministry, because the Home Ministry were the big boys in the shutdown that we had. Uh, our consulates, overseas consulates, our missions abroad, I never ever thought that I will be on a one-to-one email with India's ambassador to Qatar, which we never think that that anybody does that, but they did, and it was, you see this saying, "Together we can achieve more." That was a classic example of together we can achieve. Um, See, the government of India, when the first circular came out about the lockdown, there was a line at the end of the circular which said that transit accommodation and charter flights for seafarers. It said that line. But it's one thing to write a line, and the second thing is to convert that line into action. How does it work now? So we were groping around quite a bit. We were working very closely with the Director General's office and the Ministry of Shipping. We would have a number of Zoom meetings, etc., with them. Initially, we started with the first problem was that the certificates which were expiring on board, or seafarer certificates were expiring. How do we renew them now? So the DG came out with the open circular. Okay, extend it, which was very essential. As okay. At the same time, the IMO also realizing this problem, they also came out with a circular urging the countries urging the countries to take a very pragmatic approach to seafarer and ship certification, because you couldn't do surveys. How are you going to extend the life of ship certificates? So they urged, which mostly people did. Once that was sorted out, then the DG shipping came out. We said, okay, we need to relieve people also, because that was permitted. So the DG came out with a protocol of how to do reliefs in Indian ports. Now, Third, then we came out, we said, look, these 2 months, okay, because March 24th, I remember, was the lockdown. So April, May was okay. But by May, people were getting very upset on board that they needed to come home. We cannot live like that endlessly. So by that time, the government of India had opened up those Vande Bharat flights. They were called Vande Bharat, isn't it? I think so. They were called Vande Bharat flights.
Correct. Vande Bharat.
In which to bring back our stranded Indian citizens outside. So we took a cue from that and we approached the DG Shipping and the ministry and said, can we have charter flights only for seafarers? Okay, because there was one country in the world which was still operating its airline, and that was Qatar. So from Doha, they were having certain flights going all over the world, which included Europe, which included America, Australia, etc., Hong Kong. So Qatar played a big role in that, Qatar Airways, and they came on board with our proposal that we will fly our people to Qatar and they will then board the, onward international designated flights. So for this, a lot of countries had to come together, which they did. And again, our role, we thought, was not just to send people out, because that was only 50% of the problem. Okay. We needed to protect jobs. So we needed to set up a rota. That means somebody will go and somebody will come back also on the same flight. And Qatar, they changed their immigration rules and said that we will allow a layover of up to 24 hours for Indian citizens, seafarers, which was a big relief because the flights come at different times and we had to all gather the people at Doha airport to make our flight worthwhile, because the rules were such that we could not station the air crew. See, they are also bound by the rest of our regulations, and it's tricky to breach those. So we had to have a turnaround flight which will come back in 8 hours. So if the flying time from Bombay to Doha was 3 hours, they could be on ground for 1 hour and 3 hours fly back. Because the 1 hour, just for your information, apparently the air crew count the time from the time they leave their home to board the aircraft, and not like us when we sign on, not the flying time. So that was a lot. But when he's going home, that is not counted because he's going home. So we had to cater to that, and there were a lot of other partners who played a big role, supporting role. One is our partner association, FOSMA. Another one is the airline, ATPI, Griffin. They played a huge role because commercially they chartered the aircraft. We only filled it up. Okay, it was difficult. We even had to go out to the immigration department and say they wanted a crew list. We said, look, we can't just give you one crew list. See, they are used to receiving a manifest. If the aircraft capacity has 120 seats, they can receive a manifest of only 120. We said our seafarers are not like that. Just because today I think he will go, but the ship may get delayed and he may not go today. So allow us to give you a higher number in the manifest. You approve it, but no more than 120 will board the aircraft. So little did I know that I will know an Airbus 119, difference between Airbus 119 and Airbus 121, how many seats they will have. I didn't know, but I came to know that the hard way. But it was fun. It was fun when it happened. And the crowning part of it, crowning glory, I must say, was that on the day of the Seafarer, which is 26 June, we actually operated 3 flights in one day to Doha and back, and I think we moved more than 1,000 seafarers in one day on 3 flights, or something close to that. And all in all, during that phase, we moved about 20,000 seafarers, which was, I think, a sizable number. And this is something I like to boast about, that as MASA and FOSMA, we never charged one naya paisa more than what was the cost of the fare. This was a service provided to all. It was not limited to our members. To some extent, it had to be because they were committing financially. They were financial partners because, at the end of the day, when Griffin chartered the flight, somebody has to pay Griffin now, which our members did. But we had a number of occasions when there were certain people who were in distress. Somebody's family was in turmoil, and we accepted that yes, you can fly. And the role of DG shipping, the role of ministry, the role of our embassies outside Singapore and Qatar, typically Hong Kong, when we had an issue in moving people from Hong Kong, they actually opened our Hong Kong embassy on a Saturday and cleared, because you had to have embassy clearance for people to fly out. They had to be Indian, that's all they could come. Which Doha said, only Indian citizens I will allow. So they did that. So it was all-round cooperation. And that is when Doha actually set up a seafarer lounge at Qatar airport, at Doha airport. Do you know that? That's the only airport in the world which has a seafarer lounge.
Really?
Only seafarers access that lounge, which I think is a wonderful thing.
Because they had to stay that layover period.
24 hours. So where will they stay? So they created a lounge. And it exists till today. It exists. Yes.
Only for seafarers.
Only for seafarers.
Oh,
I was transiting Doha. I went to see it. So they didn't allow me in, which is right.
Yeah.
It's correct. So there were very tough times, but I think at the end of the day they were very satisfying, and it was only because of associations it could happen. Otherwise, it was not going to be working. So yes.
Talking of the overall industry nowadays, like in the perspective of seafarers, or even not just the Indian seafarers, but overall seafarers, what do you see are the biggest challenges now what you are facing? Since MASA is already working on the quality improve, so what do you see now are the biggest challenge, and what we need to do as a, or the future generation have to do?
See, we have reached the numbers that we have reached because we mean something, because we bring something to the table. See, every ship owner, and let's not look at a ship owner. Today, if you and I were to go in the market to procure something, we have choices. Yeah. So I don't mean to demean the seafarer in any manner. Kindly do not take it as that. But if I were a ship owner in Hong Kong and I want a competent crew, I don't have to look only at India. There's Philippines, there is China, there is Indonesia, there is Poland, there is the other places.
There are so many countries now coming
Vietnam.
up. Yeah.
So when he is coming to India to look at us, we must be bringing something else to the table.
Correct. Some differentiation.
Some differentiation is there. And I think we need to maintain that differentiation. People only look at cost. I don't think cost is the matter. I think what do you bring with the cost is the matter. The differentiator is that. Maybe it's our ability to speak English. Maybe that is the differentiator.
Yeah.
Maybe it is ability to use technology, adaptation to use of technology. Maybe it is our proactiveness. Maybe it is our soft skills. Maybe it is our competency itself, or our acumen in understanding the commercial nuances of. We are all merchant mariners. Yeah. So maybe that is that. So we need to identify that and we need to hone that. So, for a seafarer, it's like this. This is a profession where actually, if you go across in our country, you go to the majority of the companies, generally a second officer gets paid more or less the same amount. Yeah. Generally, a master or chief engineer gets, give or take a little bit here and there, they get paid the same. This is one industry where there is par payment. Okay. If you go to the IT industry, or if you go to any, even the steel industry or any other manufacturing sector, it's not necessary that a person, a GM in Tata, Tisco will get paid the same as Jindal.
No.
Not necessary. They may have different. While here we do have the same because the ships
Correct.
are similar. That's why we are
Correct.
same. So the onus to some extent is also on the seafarer to make himself valuable.
Correct.
Okay, why would someone talk to me and not to another person? So it's necessary for the seafarer also to understand that what is it that makes me attractive. So if you have a a fitter who is also a 6G welder, now that is a value addition, and companies will pay more to have him on board because there are certain benefits that come out of that.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Similarly, if you have a deck officer who has some more attributes, people will want to, to talk to that person. If I have a choice of selecting one second officer or another one, I would rather go to the one who is better qualified, better molded than someone who's maybe not. So one of the, when we talk of youngsters, we like to give advice, and one of the pieces of advice is, don't look at value added training as something that is a pain in the neck,
Just as a requirement.
just
of
as
a
to meet somebody else's requirement.
Yeah.
If you are going there, you might as well learn something and enjoy it and,
Right,
contribute towards it,
Right.
to improve it.
Definitely.
There is no point in being a reluctant learner.
Mm.
Somebody is paying you to go
Take
there.
the advantage of that.
Take advantage of it. What do you lose in that? You
Right.
lose nothing.
Correct.
Yeah.
You only gain.
You
from
only
that.
gain. You have nothing to lose.
Correct,
Please
correct.
learn. And on simulators, especially on simulators, you can do things on the simulator that you can never do in real life. Yeah.
Correct.
On a simulator, you can actually try out what happens when you take a VLCC at 8 knots to the pilot station. You can try it out and see what happens.
If you want to collide, you can collide
You
also.
can try
you want
it,
to
yes.
experience
You
it.
can try it.
Yeah.
Something you will never ever be
Never.
able to do
Yeah.
outside.
Correct.
So these are all experiences, and you should grab them with both hands if possible, especially when someone else is telling you to go and do it.
How do you see, like, now, of course, facilities are increasing. Associations like MASA is working towards the quality of people. Uh, how do you see the trend of present seafarers, and like how it is faring for future 5 years or 10 years horizon? Like, we can concentrate on the Indian seafarer part where we are very much active in
Yeah.
this thing.
See, if we keep our focus on what we want to
And I
achieve.
think that is there, like with the present institutes and all.
Yes, it is very much there.
Mm.
If we keep the focus in the right direction, I think this is, a bubble that will only grow for us.
Mm.
If we stay away from unnecessary controversy, which we have stayed away so far actually, not get into comparing China ये करता है, Philippines ये करता है. What do you do? Yeah?
What do
Just
you
tell
do?
me what do you do,
Okay.
and tell me how are you going to do it, and progress. So it will be. I think the world is an oyster because the trade is growing, ships are growing,
Yeah.
and one of the fallouts of the emission control is that the ships might slow down actually.
Okay.
So that is one of the fallouts.
Mm.
So if the ships, because
At least within the transition.
yeah,
phase.
within the transition period, and if they slow down, then more ships will be required to carry the same cargo,
Correct.
and more ships
More
is more
seafarers,
jobs,
yeah.
more jobs for seafarers.
Right.
So they have to just be a bit patient, remain focused,
Right.
and not treat this as a trivial pursuit. It's a
Okay.
wonderful career.
Correct.
It has actually made a lot of difference to the lives of a lot of people.
Right.
So why spoil a good thing going? Let it be there. Some people, those who have succeeded and enjoyed that phase, should leave behind a legacy for the next generation. It should be. It's our job, I think.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So, sir, going forward, like you are the association of ship owners. So, can you a little bit give advice or elaborate advice to new generation seafarers? What are the expectations of the ship owners? Like what are they actually expecting now, whereby seafarers can be more competent, more will be a right choice for the ship owners. That way.
See, the ship owner is in it for business.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. Uh, there is a huge amount of money invested in acquiring a ship and in the maritime adventure, as we call it. So the expectation of the seafarer is to fit into that scheme of things.
Yeah.
And when I'm saying this fit into it, it's above board. Let's not get into the dirty tricks department. So the expectation is safety first, exigency or efficiency first, and to deliver the cargo safely from point A to point B. That is all that is the bottom line says. But to the ship owner also, I have a small, input, or ship operator, that the seafarer is a human being like everybody else. So kindly try and treat him also humanely. Uh, don't unnecessarily make budget cuts. Sometimes people ashore send very insensitive communication to staff on board. I have seen this. They look at the menu on board and say, "Oh, you are living well." Why are you asking such questions? If you have provided a budget and he is operating within the budget, let him eat what he wants to eat. Yeah, there has to be prudence that French fries are bad and baked potato is better. Yeah, sure, guide him there. But let's be practical also. You and I can't be eating junk food here and telling the seafarer, no, you must eat wholesome food. Well, why not? Let him have his freedom.
Yeah.
So it's the critical part is, operating the ship with the seafarer in mind also. You can't be telling the seafarer, sorry, no surely for you, no relief for you because the port doesn't allow. Yeah, but you chose to trade the ship there because it was remunerative. So now find a method to let the seafarer go home also from there, or find another method. During the COVID, one of the points where reliefs could be done was Dondra Head or Galle in Sri Lanka, because they were proactive. So they allowed charter flights between Trincomalee or some of these airports to India, and seafarers could be taken off at Galle. Why? Because at other two ends we couldn't relieve the Indian seafarers. So if you could find a solution during COVID, surely you can find a solution during non-COVID period also. Isn't it? So it's necessary to treat the seafarer as someone who is part of the system rather than someone who is necessary to run the system. They're two different things. It's important. And the wellness of seafarer is crucial to a successful voyage.
Correct. Definitely. Yes.
It is.
Well, we are at the end of an interview, sir, and very many thanks to you for talking to us. At the end, I would like you to make one comment for the present new generation in a one line or a two lines, short, which can seafarers can, like, this is what you need to be looking at, or the great advice to them.
See, I think it's a great profession. If you choose it, it's a wonderful profession. It's a very rewarding profession. Look at the pluses and not the downsides. Everything has a downside. Even if you have a shore job in Mumbai, the downside is the traffic, the bad roads, and the traffic density, moving by trains. It's not easy. So it's not that only seafarers are at the receiving end and the rest of the world is enjoying. It's not that. Everybody has a tough life. So make the most of it. And among one of the important things is whatever you do it well. Do it with the goal in sight that it has to succeed. Yeah, it's like this. You sign a contract for $500 a month. Will you accept $499 as your salary? It's only $1 less. Will you accept? No. So if you have signed on to keep a 4 to 8 watch, then keep a 4 to 8 watch. Why a quarter past 4 to 10 minutes to 8? Why should it be? So if you are expecting rewards, then you have to be a professional.
This is a very good profession. Come into this profession and try to be professional. Be true to your profession. Yeah.
It is rewarding. There's no question about it. It is rewarding.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
It was nice talking.
Thank you.
If I could have allowed like 2-3 hours more, we could have talked, right? But I know your time is precious.
I need to run.
And yes. Thanks again for
Thank you very much.
Giving us this interview.
Thank you.
And
thank you so much.
it was pleasure talking to you.
Thank
you.